Okay, I don't know if anyone can hear me. Hello? Hello? Oh, well. I'm going to just start working on this painting. The colors and values and stuff don't look very good. It looks so dark, and I don't think there's a way for me to be able to adjust or make those changes, which, yeah, I don't know how to fix that. But I guess I'll just do another one of these live stream videos and see if I can figure it out. But I do have a painting on my computer that is referenced. Here, I'll turn the camera so that you can see the photo. And it's blown out, but there's a photo of a model that I had like 15 years ago. So there's the reference. And I'm wanting to set this up so that it doesn't get in the way. Focus, there we go. Okay, so a couple of different ways to be able to approach this. First off, I have white up here. This is Gamblin's Quick Dry White. So Gamblin's Quick Dry White. And then I also have Gamblin's Umber. This is raw umber down here. Looks really black. So values are going to be a little askew. And then I have just these two guys that I'm going to be using to mix with each other to be able to create a painting. Now, there's something before I get started that I just kind of want to show you. If I just take this umber and I paint it here on the canvas, I'm going to use a little bit of mineral spirits just to kind of thin it down. It creates a nice warm color. You see how warm of a color that is? So that is good until you do something like this, where you take some white and you put it in with that warm color. And if I mix a little bit more umber in with it, look at what happens to the color. I'll try to make it the same value. So it's close to the same value, but it goes colder. So you get this cooler temperature here versus this warmer temperature on the side. That's the difference between doing an underpainting and a grisaille. So this is going to be a grisaille. I'm not going to do an underpainting because they're really thin. And you get all this detail in there. And I like to play with paint. So I want to do things a little bit more direct. And there's a couple of ways to be able to do this. So you could draw out your entire figure on the painting, which I don't think that's fun either. It doesn't really leave room for mistakes. And I like mistakes. Mistakes are good to have, I think. And I like fear of doing something because then I usually end up doing it. But if I come in here, I'm just going to start off. I'm going to put the top of the head and the bottom of the head. That's going to be my general proportions. If I were to draw a line straight down through it and cut it in half, that's basically where the eyes are going to sit. And if I cut this distance in half again, that's where the septum is going to sit. So the nose will be set just a little bit higher. And then if I cut it halfway between this distance and that distance again, that is usually the bottom of the lips. So the lip is going to come up like that. So if I have this general proportion of the eyes are about the width of the nose. If you draw a line directly down from the nose, that's going to create a tear duct shape. Same thing with on this side. So now you can see we have nose, mouth, general eyes placed in there. I'm not worried about whether or not it looks like her right now. I'm just trying to get general proportions figured out. Now, width of the head is usually about half the height. So if I go with this distance to there, it should be about, yep, the width of the face is close to the half the height of the head. It's just a little bit bigger. All right, the other thing for the chin, it goes wider and then it slopes up and out, kind of like that. And then in this reference, she has a hat. And this hat is wider than the head. So I'm not going to draw it in line with the head because it's wider and it sits on top of it. And it kind of has this subtle little angle that comes down like that. And then there's hair that kind of shoots out. Now, right now, you might be thinking, what the crap is this? And I totally agree with you. What the crap is it? I don't know. But I have something on my canvas now that I can look at, and it's not going to look really good right now, but that doesn't make too much of a difference. I'm going to take these shapes and I'm going to correct them. For example, the eyes, they are too small right now. I need to make them bigger. Okay, and then I'm not going to paint in the eyebrows or anything right now because, again, this is a poster study. I'm just trying to get general proportions figured out. So the width of the mouth, if I were to draw a vertical line from the iris, it comes down to about the width of the mouth. Her jaw is just a little bit wider, and that's a softer transition as it comes up. If you're going to make your model a little bit more feminine, then usually you just soften out the transitions on the jawline. If you soften those out, it'll make the woman look more feminine. That's one thing. The other thing is making certain shapes smaller or thinner. Here I have the top of the lip. And then the bottom of the lip is actually bigger. So outside my studio right now, we have a really big windstorm that's coming through because it's supposed to get to 70 degrees. It's been 99 degrees, 100 degrees here lately. So it's been a lot. All right. Now that I have the general proportions figured out and the general shapes figured out, I'm going to bring this in just a little bit more. I'm going to start to block in the shapes. Now, this paintbrush has some blue on it. That shouldn't affect it or change what I'm actually going to work on for the painting, but because I'm going to be mixing a lot of these things together. So I'm going to start with my darkest values. And if umber is my darkest value, I'm going to thin it down just a little bit. Also, just to tell you what this is Alumalite. And this is a canvas that I used for, it's not Canson. It's a Dutch, I think it's Dutch, maybe it's right. Claussen's linen. Oh my goodness, my brain. So there's a Claussen's linen, and I'm going to increase the height of this because it needs to come up just a little bit higher. Now, why would you want to do a poster study? A poster study is supposed to help you figure out what your values, colors, and shapes are generally going to be. So you don't have to worry about details. I'm going to get some more paint, thin it out. There's a portrait grade Claussen linen. I think it's a 15. I think that's what they had it as. Oh yeah, I need to get a lot more paint. If I cannot go darker than this current value, which I can't, is my darkest value, it's umber, then I'm going to have to add some white to it. And I won't do that here just yet. I just want to get this shape filled in. So poster studies, really good to have and use. I use them all the time. Actually, when I start all of my paintings, I will do a poster study. But this is my darkest value. I'm going to bring it down to where the hat line is. Also notice I have not put any detailed information in it, like this nice little strap that goes across the top of it. There's a buckle off to the side. I'm going to look at these shapes and determine if the width of the shape is correct in relationship to the height. And it still feels like it is too wide. So I'm going to bring this down just a little bit more and see how that changes the shapes. Okay, good. And then I have other shapes from the hair. They're almost as dark as the hat. So I'm going to grab a little bit of white, put it in there, makes it a little bit more wet. And then I will come in and put these darker values that are sitting here in the hair. And then the value that matches her hat for her clothes is just the same dark value. Again, I'm putting mineral spirits. I'm not putting too many mineral spirits or Gamsol, whatever you want to call it. Not putting too much in there. I just want to get some information down. So I can look at these big, simple shapes. All right, now that I have the big, simple shapes, there's a shadow shape that comes here underneath the hat, goes across on top of the bridge, comes back down underneath this eye and off to the side. So this value is not as dark as this value. And so if this umber is my darkest value, I need to add well, if my white will come off, I need to add some white to the umber, and I added way too much. And I will come in and place my value. Now you might not see that it's a lighter value. It is. So there is a little bit of a lighter value compared to the hat. Parts of it actually need to go just a titch lighter. There's like a light that kind of comes in here that's being bounced in. Same with the side of the face right there. Okay, I have those values placed in there, and then I have the shadow shape that comes underneath the chin. It's about the same value as that because that is the skin tone. Jaw is a little bit softer. Much like that. Now we have a lighter value that is here in the neck. This value is darker than all the values in the face. So I'm going to go to this next value shape. Here, I'll outline it for you so that you can see what shape I'm going to fill in. This is kind of like paint by number. If I draw a shape here and here, this is where her sternocleidomastoid comes in, both of those, and then her trachea down here. It's a very soft transition though. But because there's a poster study, I'm going to make it a little bit harder edged. Okay, and then just a little bit lighter than what this value is, it comes into the cheeks. I'm going to keep it basically the same value as it comes into the cheeks. It's a triangle shape that is sitting right there. And another triangle shape sitting right here. And then there is a transition that is soft. So to describe soft changes in form, with the poster study, you're supposed to keep all the edges hard, but you can keep the values closer together so that it looks like it's turning form. So here you can see this value is lighter than this value, and this value is lighter than that value. But I'm keeping it nice and flat. Oh, I forgot another part. Okay. It was okay. I mean, I might have totally messed up. Hi, Oliver. Thanks for watching. All right, so I need to go because I didn't do the darker value of the nose. I'm going back into this darker value here, and I'm going to paint in the shape of that nose, the shadow shape. So now I have the shadow shape of the nose, the shadow underneath the chin, the shadow in the eye set, and I'm going to take the same darker shadow shape and paint it in where the lips are located. So just a little bit of a corner there and a little bit of a corner there. Now I can build up those light values that are surrounding the face. But there is one other part I forgot underneath the bottom lip. So darker value there. Now I need to create my lighter values again in the face. So I'm going into this lighter value, gonna add a little bit of white. And this is gonna go for the top lip here. Again, keeping it hard edged. I'm not trying to blend anything. Blending is just gonna destroy the painting or the poster study. Harder edge here, hard edge there. Again, hopefully you can see it. I think you can see it in the video. It's a little bit darker there, goes a little bit lighter onto the edge. We need to do the same value on the side of the nose here and also here. So again, there's like paint by number. It's basically what a poster study is. The other thing to kind of keep in your mind when you're working on a poster study is light. How is light falling on the figure or the face or the object, whatever it is you're painting or drawing? And with this reference, the light is coming right down here on the model from behind the viewer. And because of that, shapes are going to be relatively flat. And I need to lighten up the value just a little bit more in the clavicle, which it is a lighter value here and a lighter value here. So lighter values here in the lights. Again, I still have the shadow. Part of the shadow is getting a little bit small, but I'm going to just keep going. I'll make adjustments later. Here on the cheek. There on the cheek. Now, values in the cheeks are just a little bit darker than where they would be on the forehead because they have more red tones into them. And red is just a darker value. Yeah, that's true. No one does know that I'm here yet. That's all right. I am making this video for students that have asked. I guess just none of them are available to be able to watch the video. So they'll just watch it later. Maybe, or maybe they just won't watch it at all. You never know these days. So lighter value in the cheek here, a little bit lighter value in the cheek there because I want those shapes to turn. And then this needs to be slightly darker in value. So Oliver, where are you coming from? Maine, nice. Dude, the other side of the country. Yeah, it is. It's been 99 degrees here for the last couple of weeks, and then tomorrow it's supposed to drop down to 76. It's crazy. Weird weather. I don't know if it's weird in Maine, but here it's been pretty darn weird. Oh, yeah, rain would be nice. I don't think we've seen rain for a long time. I don't know, like 3 weeks maybe. And the last rainstorm that we had was maybe a tenth of an inch of water or something. It was not very good. All right, now I'm just kind of putting together these shapes and having them make more sense. Oh, good. I do want to see more rain here, please. My fruit trees would love it. Right now, they're really thirsty. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's like 30-mile-an-hour winds out there right now. So it's pushing cold weather this way. The other thing, and I haven't really been doing this, but a lot of artists recommend to keep your brushes clean, meaning if you are using darker shadow values, like I just placed that darker value there, I should use a shadow value brush. And then when I'm wanting to do lighter values, I get a separate brush for those lighter values. That will keep your colors and your values more clean. And sometimes I just forget to do that. Okay, for a poster study, this is pretty close to being done for a poster study. Again, I'm not trying to mix everything together and figure out what all the little details are. But I can take this poster study, which I think I will, and make it into a more refined painting. So we have separation of light shapes from shadow shapes. That's the most important thing with the poster study. And some of these midtones need to be just slightly darker in value around the cheeks. You love studies? I enjoy studies too. I think that they're really, really beneficial. Okay, gonna go back to my dark brush. And I'm gonna clean up some of these darker values. I do too. There's so much rawness to a lot of studies. And I like how simple the shapes are. And sometimes you get those nice little Bob Ross happy accidents. Yeah, it's a good place to be. I agree. My wife, on the other hand, she does not really like studies at all. She's like, why don't you finish the painting? It looks unfinished. I'm like, I know, that's why it looks like a painting. Why would I want to do photorealism? I know, but it's okay. Everybody has different tastes, right? Somebody else might be getting on here and going, oh my gosh, that's the worst painting I've ever seen. Why would somebody waste their time doing that painting? All right, so now I'm just going in and I'm refining some of these shadow shapes so that I can get the proportions correct. So I need to soften out the edge between this top cast shadow and the light in the face. No, I'm sure they haven't seen yours yet, but I haven't seen yours yet either, so I don't know if it's good or bad. Send me a link to your stuff. I'd love to see it. Or not, you don't have to. It's okay. And yes, I am wanting to make this a weekly thing where I do a painting. It might be on different subjects or objects or whatnot, but yes, it will be weekly. Yeah, I like learning and watching videos from other artists and other teachers. I feel like education, especially in the arts, should generally be free. Because you never know, some people might really understand your process. I've had some friends that teach and they're amazing artists, but not very good teachers. And then other people that are really good teachers, but not very good artists. Well, thank you. Okay, so her neck still looks really thick to me. So I'm going to come in and make it thinner, especially on this side too. That's the nice thing about these poster studies is you can see these things, see these shape changes and make corrections. And it's not like you have to change the entire thing all at once. And then the face does need to get a little bit more narrow here on the cheek. And then a little bit softer transition on the jaw. Right? Totally easy corrections. If I sit here and render out all the eyes and the shapes of the eyes, and then I find out they're in the wrong spot, that's a hard correction to make. I need to widen the jaw a little bit more here. And slightly darken the value of the lips. And I'm going to make these lips close to the same value because there's not that much shadow going on that bottom lip. Okay, now it's time to get into the nitty gritty of things. In terms of proportions and values, this looks pretty good to me. I'm happy with how the poster study has turned out. Now it's for the fun stuff. I'm going to start off with the nose and then shift out. Because if I'm good with the shapes and the proportions, which I am generally speaking, I want to shift this nose over just a little bit more because she is kind of looking at an angle. And then that will soften out and shift the center of the nose off just a little bit. And we want to keep these value transitions soft now here between the nose and the cheek so that you can lighten up values and turn form. Every time there's a change in form, there's a change in value. So this is moving up and around, and the highlight is right about there. And then there's a secondary highlight right about there on the tip of the nose. And everything else is darker in value as it goes away from that form. So I'm not going to blend in a lighter value there because I want the form to turn. here we have just a slightly darker value. And here we have a harder edge on the edge of the nose. And I like to really plop on a good amount of white paint where there's a lighter value, so that it'll kind of catch the natural light coming in. And if that is my lightest light, which is here on the cheek, then everything else gets darker as it moves away from it. So I'm gonna kind of pull it down and around. And this is where you start to render form instead of just keeping it as a poster study. But you can see that if I have a good poster study, I can just take those values and soften the edges between the shapes, and it will turn the form a lot easier. Also, this highlight is not completely straight. It kind of bulges out a little bit at the bridge of the nose. Now, in order to define this nose a little bit more, I need to get some darker values in those shadow shapes. So I'm going to use the smaller brush. Paint in one there, the other there, and then there is a shadow that is being cast underneath the nose there. All right, and now back to the bridge of the nose. This value is just a little bit too dark, so I need to lighten it up. Maybe that was too light, so I need to darken down part of the edge of it. And then I need to lighten up. And values are just as dark or as light, which is usually determined by a relationship of the value next to it. So if something looks too light in value or too dark in value, let's just go with too light. Something looks too light. Like this looks too light. I have a choice. I can either darken this part down, or I can lighten up the surrounding values. One of the two, and that'll make it look more natural. And edge quality makes a big difference. Hard edges like this right there that I'm putting in, that is a description of a cast shadow. A soft edge, kind of like this part over here, that is a description of a form shadow. So I need to harden up these shadows. So there's a difference between what is being cast and what is being, what is describing form as it's turning. The philtrum there, good old philtrum. Let's go back to this lighter value as it comes up around the edge of the nose. And the value transitions on this side of the face are more subtle than this side. So I'm going to slowly bring it around the form. But if it starts to look too flat, like it kind of is, then I'm going to get a darker value and come from this shadow side into the light. So Oliver, do you paint? Oh, sweet. What do you usually paint, subject-wise? Yep, I know how you feel. I am kind of the same way. I feel like, well, I don't know. I feel like I'm much better at doing portraits than I am still lifes, but sometimes I really enjoy still lifes a lot more than portraits. When you say figures are your soft spot, what does that mean? I don't really know what that means. You just love painting figures? Yes, I am the same. I love figures too. Maybe next week I'll do a figure painting. I do too. I really love the possibility of messing it up, but then also just exploring it, trying out new things, seeing what works for shapes, what doesn't. So that have you ever heard of Jeremy Lipking? Lipking. Yeah, he is a phenomenal figure painter. I studied with him, like 15 years ago. You should look him up. He's awesome. I studied with him about 15 years ago, and we were working on a portrait of this beautiful Black woman. She was from Africa. And I was young and working on the portrait of her. Jeremy was doing the same painting. And she came over and she looked at my painting and she said, "Wow, that looks just like me." And I was so excited. I was just like, "Yes, I've nailed it. I got her likeness." And then she walks over to Jeremy Lipking's painting, and it didn't really look like her, but it was gorgeous. And she said, "Holy cow, that is such a beautiful painting." And that's when I realized, getting a likeness is not always important. Yeah, I agree. I think getting a likeness is important, but I think a lot of times I miss that trying to make something beautiful can be more important, at least to me. Some people, it's more important to make it look like a person than it is to make it beautiful. Kind of like this painting right now. Am I caring about making it look exactly like her? Not so much. Um, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, she's beautiful, but I'm not concerned about making it look exactly like her. I'm trying to find the beauty of the shapes and the forms and make those more interesting. Yes, I agree. I was trained to be an illustrator. That's what I got my undergrad in. And it's all about making it look just like what the reference is, not necessarily making it look beautiful. I am not on Truth Social. I don't know what that is. What is that? I'm assuming it's a social media platform. Okay, sounds great. Thanks for stopping in. Have fun in the rain. You too. Okay, so the neck is a cylinder going this way. So I need to darken the vise on the edges and make it lighter as it comes towards the apex or the center of the cylinder. And then when it goes further back around, and the way you do that is describe that change in shape with a change in value. That's why paint by number works so well. It's because you can just add some darker values and it'll push it back in space. And I'm taking this poster study to the next level. So I went from a poster study, now I'm refining the shapes a little bit more. And I need to get more paint. There we go. Well, thank you, Marwan. I'm digging it a little bit too. Saving the best for last, though. Those eyes. All right, gonna go back to my dark paintbrush. I need to refine some of those shadow shapes a little bit more. Yes, I am going to keep it recorded on the channel, and I will have it posted later when I'm done, which I'll be done here in maybe an hour. No problem. You're welcome. I make these videos and stuff for my students so that if they miss a class or something, they can review it and get content from the painting demo. So Marwan, where are you coming from? Okay, now I need a smaller brush to get those details in the shadow shapes. So I want to refine some of those shapes better. I wish this looked better on the camera. It looks so shoddy, at least when I'm looking at it. Creepy eyes, creepy eyes. And then we have and I'm making the values just slightly darker than the shadow shape value. And when I'm brushing it, I'm going up and down. And the reason why I'm doing a brush stroke up and down is because I have a light source that's coming up and down like this. And if I do it sideways here, I'm going to take this nice dark value, and I'm going to go sideways for this eyebrow. And you can't see much information in there. Whereas if I take the same value, I just got that same color, and I go vertical like this, you can see the value transitions a lot better. And that's because it's not picking up light as it's coming down onto the shape of the paint. So vertical brush strokes, especially if you're using thick paint and you have a light source that's behind you, that really helps describe the value changes in shapes. Because I mean, even at the angle that I'm sitting at right now, I can't really see much of anything. So I have to stand up to see these shapes in the shadows. Okay, straight umber. And straight umber. And then right when it gets up here, it gets so dark in value because there's a plane change that you can't really see it because it's the top of her forehead and there's no light that's really going in there. So I'm going to darken up and soften out the forms of the edge here in the hat and her forehead. Same thing with the edge here. It's just darker in value as it's starting to turn that form. Oh, sure. Talking about edges. Yes. So I already did a poster study and put in some values. So there's already paint that's on here. And it was a solid flat shape initially. And if I want to take this edge right here and make it softer, all I have to do is either come from the dark and go into the light, or come from the light and go into the dark. But I don't want to scrub it too much. I'm going to take the paint and softly move it into that dark. And now it just softened out that whole entire transition. I could have gone from the dark side and over too. But you don't want to cut out shapes or forms very much. You want to softly build up. If you want it to look natural, you want to softly build up those values right next to each other. So here on this part of the orbit, I want to soften out that transition. So I just did a couple of dabs with my paintbrush. Here I've loaded my paintbrush with a darker value and gone around to this edge because I want to get the temple or the side of the head a little bit darker because it's receiving less light in my reference. And then go back over it to soften out those transitions. The other thing too is if you have a really hard edge here, people will really kind of cut that out. Cut the shape out. I sound like a dad saying, cut that out. But yeah, they're going to cut that shape out along the jaw. But this is hair, and hair is pretty soft edged. If it's behind, if the hair is behind the face, then yes, you want to have a hard edge. So right now it's kind of soft, and I loaded my brush. There's a bristle brush, and I come into it with a loaded paint. And now I just hardened up the edge of that cheek. So that's how you harden up edges. You just take more paint and add it to the canvas. And then if you want to soften out things, then you take a value that is in between this, but a little bit darker. So I'll pick this value here and go underneath the cheek and just paint it in, and then go around the edges of that shape and soften it out. So now it will give it the sense that there's form softly turning for the cheek versus the mouth area, the muzzle. That's what you want to call it. I know dogs have muzzles, but I think humans, it's called a muzzle. So that's how you can soften out or turn form. Now, like the whites of the eyes, I'll demonstrate that. Or actually here, I'll demonstrate on the bridge of the nose. Here it's kind of hard edged, and I want it to be softer so it feels like light is going up there. So I'm going to just take the edge of my paintbrush and work from these light shapes, picking up the lighter paint and shifting it into these darker shapes. And that really softens out the transition between the lights and the shadows. And now the whites of the eyes. So I love doing this because students will paint in the white of the eyes. They'll take white like this. I mean, there's straight white, and they're like, it's the white of the eye. So I have to paint in the white of the eye. So I'll come in here and paint in the white of the eye. And what did that just do? It's lighter in value than the light shapes of the skin. So to not make her look like a zombie, here, I'll make her look like a zombie. Ta-da. Students don't believe me, but they're like, there, I painted the white of the eyes. Now they look normal, but not really. They don't. You have to be soft with that value. So instead of just taking straight white, you would take whatever value is in the shadow, which these are my shadow values. I'm going to take those values and not make them too light. Just going to build up a little bit of a light value. Take some umber. My reference is on a computer at the beginning of the session. I don't know how long, an hour ago, I showed the reference. So you could probably go to that and see it, I think. I don't know. Maybe you can. All right. So if I come back in here, I can save this painting by coming in and painting a darker value where the white part of the eye is called the sclera. And here I'm just kind of killing that really light value. Now it's pushing it darker into space, and I can refine the shape of the sclera. And the key with painting the white of the eyes is to make the shape generally the same on both sides. So it's a little bit wider here than it is there. So I need to go back in, get a darker value, and make it slightly wider in the center. And I was saying wide, not white, just in case anybody was thinking I was saying white. Now I'm refining the shape of the eyelid underneath that sclera. And making the value darker. And here, if I just take these eyelashes, and if you paint in the eyelashes, it looks really fake. Unless you bring everything up to the same amount of detail. But I don't have time for that. So I just went in and softened out those darker values for the eyelid. So here's the eyelid. And also the eyelashes. I just kind of group them together all into one simple shape. And then bring it all the way into the tear duct and the bridge of the nose. And now I have to soften out the value between the bridge of the nose and that shadow shape. It's a good idea, Marwan. Thanks. So I'm assuming you're talking about so that other people can look at the reference and look at my painting at the same time. Okay, gonna refine these eyebrows just a little bit more. Darker value there, darker value here as it comes up with the eye. And then I'm going to go back into the sclera a little bit and just kind of give a little bit more shape there. All right, now I need to refine all of the other shapes. So I have these darker values that I start as a poster study in there. Now I'm going to go in and refine those because I have the shapes in the face pretty well done. As I said that, I'm now just going in and correcting some things. So funny. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I guess I'd never thought about that in terms of people wanting to do the same painting. Okay, so back to the hat. I had a bunch of these darker values that were sitting in there. And I will paint those in. The downside with this lighting situation is I have to do vertical brush strokes for everything. Good heavens, it's so rumbly out there. It's like 40-mile-an-hour winds outside the studio. It's crazy loud. All right, and since I can't go darker than straight umber, because that's my blackest black, I'm gonna have to lighten up the value of some of these things. Especially like where the hair is sitting. A lot of people ask me, how on earth do you paint hair? Well, you paint hair just the same way that you paint anything else. And I know you might be thinking, well, duh. Yeah, that's a easy response, but it's true. So what I'm doing is I'm painting these shapes with simple shapes. This is kind of a shadow shape right here. Here's another shadow shape right here. And there's another shadow shape that kind of shoots up like that. Everything else is slightly lighter in value. So if I take white and then also umber and mix them together, but I want to keep it on the dark side, then I can come in here and start to put these lighter values that come out as hair. And this is just, I'm just doing a poster study with the hair shapes too. Right there. right there. And then I have a lighter value that's sitting off to the edge right there. Again, I don't know if you can, yeah, you can see it just a little bit. Okay, so I have my light shapes and my shadow shapes, and then I go back into my light shapes, take a lighter value, a little bit more paint, a little bit lighter. There we go. And I go from the lightest part, which is the peak, and stroke away into the shadows. Same thing with this side, go from the peak of the light and then move the brush stroke away from the edge into the shadows. Then you can always come back in and soften up shapes, harden up edges, cut into some of those bigger shapes. Here I'm going to go with the darkest value again. And cut into those shapes. Same thing with clothes. I can't go darker than what is right here, so I know her jacket, coat, sweater, whatever that is, comes a little bit closer in like that. I know that there are people that are like, how do you make something look more artistic? Like, instead of just defining a shape, kind of how I'm doing, I'm going with the edge of the shape, so I can keep a really hard edge by going back and forth like this. But if I have a fluffy brush, you're not going to get a good shape there. So what some artists will do is they'll load the brush with paint and go over the whitish area, and it'll start to pick up that grayish paint, and it softens out the edge and it gives it more of an artistic look. So if I want to kind of soften out some things, just take a stroke and bring it up and soften it out. So now there's going to be less focus coming down in towards the sternum of the model or figure, and visually they'll want to stay up into the face. All right, and then I have these lighter values that I'm going to paint in the hat. I was going to do that earlier, but then I got distracted because I get distracted easily. And I'm going to take a lighter value here. Put it on the rim. Lighter value that goes along. There's a band that is on top of the hat here. Need to lighten that up just a little bit more. And again, vertical brush strokes to be able to see what your values really are looking like. If you do horizontal brush strokes like I just did previous, you won't be able to see those values very good because then it's the light that's changing the value. It's not the actual value of your paint. Gonna darken up some of the shadow value here. Soften out that edge. And then I want to push some of the lights in her cheek just a little bit more. So I have my dirty brush and I'm just adding white to it. I don't want to get too white, but I'm just going to see how white this looks. That's not too bad. Then put a lighter value on top of that nose. That might be just a little bit too white. And a little bit more on the lips. I'm going to pull it down. This is a dry brush. I didn't add any paint to it. I just took off the paint. Same thing with this. I don't want to add more paint to it. I want to soften it out so that it's not as distracting of a highlight. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking at this camera and the shapes and values are looking really kind of weird from that angle. But then when I'm looking at it straight on, how I'm painting it, the values are looking really good and soft and subtle. So if you don't have a good amount of paint on your painting, you can't do what I'm currently doing. So I have a good amount of paint sitting on there. And I can just come in and soften out the edges of some of these values that are really distracting. And they might look slightly dirty. And there are these little values that are in there. You might be saying, what on earth is he doing? There's little speckles or holes that are in the paint on the canvas, and they're just kind of bugging me. So I thought I'd remove them. I need to change the angle of this upper lip just a little bit more. I'm not going to spend 5 hours shading it like Napoleon Dynamite does. Or was it 3 hours? There's something. Need a lighter value to kind of push that lip down a little bit more. There we go. And then just a little bit darker value underneath. There we go. All right. I think I'm going to call it a day. I'll do another video next week of the painting and the whole process. Maybe I'll do a figure or landscape or still life. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Put it on the books. Let's see if I can get a better view of this painting so everybody can see it. Hold on, it's going to be jostled. All right, that tends to look a little bit better. Wish I could lighten up the value of this thing though. It's all good. All right. Thank you, and hopefully the information was beneficial to you. If not, then that sucks. Either way, have a stellar day. We'll see you next week.